Tonight, we're going to explore one of the most haunting and beautiful stories ever told beneath the star-filled skies of ancient Greece. Together, you will walk through fragrant meadows, sacred mountains, and shadowed halls where a young goddess unknowingly approaches the destiny that will change both heaven and earth forever. Before we begin, if you enjoy these peaceful journeys through mythology, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe. I'd also love to know where you're listening from and what your local time is, as listeners from around the world gather beneath the same quiet night sky. Now, let your breathing slow and allow yourself to step into an age when every breeze carried the whisper of a god. The first thing you notice is the silence, not an empty silence, but one alive with distant birdsong, buzzing bees, and the gentle murmur of wind moving through endless olive groves. The mountains of Greece rise softly against the morning light, their rocky slopes touched by silver mist. Cypress trees stand like patient guardians along narrow paths leading toward hidden sanctuaries where generations of worshippers have left offerings of honey, barley, and fragrant oil. You begin walking across fertile fields where wheat ripples like golden water beneath the rising sun. The earth itself seems content. Every blossom opens without hurry. Every stream reflects a sky so blue that it appears untouched by sorrow. This is the world protected by Demeter. To the ancient Greeks, Demeter was never simply a goddess of grain. She was the quiet promise that tomorrow's bread would still rise from today's soil. Every loaf baked inside a humble village, every vineyard heavy with grapes, every orchard bending beneath ripe figs existed because her blessing continued. And wherever Demeter walked, another figure often followed, Persephone. She is still young by divine measure, though eternity makes such words difficult to define. Her laughter moves across the hills as lightly as birds crossing warm air. She gathers wildflowers with companions who know only peace. The petals slipping through her fingers seem brighter somehow, as though recognizing one of their own. Some ancient poets describe her as Kor, meaning simply the maiden. It is a title that speaks less of age than of possibility. She belongs completely to spring, to beginnings, to everything still waiting to bloom. As you follow at a respectful distance, you notice how naturally every living thing responds to her presence. Butterflies drift closer without fear. Tiny lizards warm themselves upon smooth stones. White poppies sway, although no wind touches them. The countryside itself appears delighted. Perhaps this is why the older women in nearby villages pause their work whenever Persephone passes. They lower baskets filled with olives or woven cloth and quietly smile. Mothers gently lift small children so they may glimpse the radiant daughter of the harvest goddess. For them, Persephone represents more than beauty. She represents hope before hardship arrives. Yet ancient myths rarely allow such peace to remain forever. As the afternoon sun climbs higher, you notice something almost impossible to explain. A raven circles above distant hills before disappearing behind drifting clouds. Moments later, the breeze grows strangely cool despite the warmth of the season. Persephone pauses, only for a heartbeat. She turns her head toward the mountains, as though hearing someone call her name. Her companions hear nothing. Neither do you. Then the feeling passes, and laughter returns to the meadow. Some surviving traditions suggest this moment never happened. Others insist the earth itself briefly recognized the future queen of the underworld before she knew her own destiny. Historians continue to debate whether such details belong to local oral traditions or later storytellers hoping to deepen the mystery. No one can say with certainty. Yet the image lingers, a goddess hearing something beyond ordinary sound. Far above, the snowy summit of Mount Olympus shines beneath brilliant light. The great gods continue their eternal lives, discussing kingdoms, storms, justice, and countless affairs of both immortals and mortals. Not every conversation reaches human ears. Not every decision is announced beneath open skies. The ancient Greeks understood that fate often begins quietly. A single conversation, a forgotten promise, a glance exchanged between gods. Long before ordinary people realize history has changed. You continue walking beside Persephone as she wanders into a sacred grove where tall oaks filter the afternoon sunlight into soft golden ribbons. Small shrines stand beneath their branches, decorated with fresh laurel leaves and tiny clay figurines left by travelers asking for healthy children. Successful harvests, or peaceful journeys across dangerous seas. The scent here changes. Warm pine resin mingles with wild thyme growing between scattered stones. Somewhere nearby, incense burns slowly before an old altar blackened by generations of offerings. Persephone kneels beside a spring whose water emerges cold from beneath smooth limestone. She cups both hands together and drinks. Tiny circles spread across the still surface for one impossible instant. You think the reflection staring back is not entirely her own. The face seems older, more solemn, crowned. Before you can look again, the water settles. Only Persephone remains. Was it merely shifting sunlight? Ancient storytellers offered no single answer. Another interpretation survives in which sacred springs briefly revealed possible futures to those chosen by destiny. Whether listeners believed such tales literally mattered less than the quiet feeling they left behind. Some futures announce themselves only through reflection as evening approaches. Shepherds begin guiding flocks toward hillside shelters. Thin columns of smoke rise from village homes where bread bakes inside clay ovens. Fishing boats appear as tiny shadows crossing distant blue water toward familiar harbors. The entire world seems wrapped in ordinary comfort. Children laugh, dogs bark. Temple bells sound softly from nearby sanctuaries. Nothing suggests catastrophe waits just beyond tomorrow. Demeter herself arrives, as twilight paints the western sky with amber and rose. Wherever her feet touch the earth, grasses seem richer, flowers slightly brighter. Mother and daughter embrace without speaking. There is no urgency between them, no fear. Only the effortless affection shared by those who believe every sunrise will be spent together. Watching them, you understand why later generations found this story so deeply moving. It begins not with kings seeking power or warriors chasing glory, but with something far more familiar. A parent believing a child will always remain within reach. Above them, the first stars appear one by one across the deepening sky. Among those silent lights, unseen by both mortals and many gods alike, the threads of destiny continue weaving themselves together. The raven has vanished. The strange whisper has faded. Yet somewhere beyond the mountains, beneath stone older than memory itself, another ruler has already begun looking upward toward the world of sunlight. And whether guided by prophecy, longing, or a design no immortal completely understands, the first invisible steps toward Persephone's greatest transformation have already begun. Morning arrives quietly, almost as though the world wishes to hold on to the peaceful evening that came before it. Dew clings to every blade of grass, and the first rays of sunlight spill gently across the hillsides. You continue beside Persephone as she leaves her mother's sanctuary, carrying nothing more than a woven basket meant for flowers and herbs. Around her, the countryside awakens with familiar sounds. Doves settle upon marble rooftops. Goats wander narrow mountain paths. Somewhere below, waves roll steadily against distant harbor walls, their rhythm carried inland by the cool sea breeze. Everything around you speaks of balance. To the ancient Greeks, balance was never guaranteed. They believed harmony existed only because divine powers continued performing their sacred duties. The harvest returned because Demeter remained generous. Rain arrived because the heavens remembered the earth. Even the changing seasons reflected conversations among gods whose decisions shaped every human life. Walking beside Persephone, it becomes easy to understand why she was so closely connected with spring itself. wherever she pauses. Wild anemones seem unusually bright. Almond blossoms scatter across the path like pale snow. Bees drift lazily from flower to flower, filling the warm air with their patient work. She notices each small wonder, never hurrying past them. There is still an innocence about her that feels untouched by ambition or sorrow. Yet innocence should never be mistaken for weakness. Many surviving traditions quietly suggest that Persephone possessed a thoughtful nature, often hidden beneath her youthful appearance, while other immortals sought admiration or power. She spent long hours listening to streams, watching birds circle distant cliffs, or wandering sacred groves where ancient trees had witnessed generations of worshippers. Perhaps she already sensed that silence could reveal truths louder than any celebration. You soon arrive at one of Demeter's oldest sanctuaries, where women from nearby villages have gathered with baskets overflowing with barley, figs, olives, and freshly baked bread. The smell of warm grain fills the morning air. Olive oil glistens inside polished clay bowls placed before an altar, darkened by centuries of sacred fire. The worshippers sing softly. Their voices rise together without urgency, carried gently beneath the tall columns surrounding the temple courtyard. Children stand quietly beside their parents, learning prayers that their own grandparents once whispered beneath these same stones. Persephone joins them without demanding attention. She smiles at an elderly woman struggling beneath the weight of a basket and quietly helps carry it toward the altar. The villagers thank her with lowered heads rather than loud praise. For them, divine kindness is most beautiful when it appears ordinary. Some researchers believe these peaceful agricultural festivals preserved memories of rituals far older than classical Greece itself. Another interpretation suggests they reflected the simple gratitude shared by farming communities whose survival depended completely upon successful harvests. Whatever their origin, the ceremonies feel deeply alive as incense curls upward into the still air. Demeter steps forward to bless the gathered offerings. Her presence changes the atmosphere almost immediately. Even the breeze slows. The scent of burning cedar mingles with crushed mint beneath countless feet. Tiny flames dance steadily without flickering. Then something unexpected happens. A single torch suddenly sputters, not from lack of oil, not from wind. Its bright flame turns strangely blue before returning to its ordinary golden color. Several priests exchange uneasy glances. No one speaks. The ceremony continues. Yet the silence surrounding that brief moment feels heavier than before. Among the ancient Greeks, unusual behavior from sacred fire often invited careful attention. Such signs were rarely interpreted with certainty. A blue flame might suggest divine presence. It might warn of unseen change. Or perhaps it meant nothing at all. Historians continue debating how consistently these omens were understood across different regions of Greece. Still, every pair of experienced eyes noticed. Persephone notices as well. She looks toward the altar with quiet curiosity, though no fear crosses her face. Her mother gently places one reassuring hand upon her shoulder before continuing the ritual. The gesture lasts only a moment, yet you cannot help remembering yesterday's raven. Small signs, easy to ignore, impossible to forget. Later, as the afternoon grows warmer, mother and daughter leave the sanctuary together. Their path winds through vineyards, climbing gentle hillsides where workers carefully trim heavy vines beneath the bright Mediterranean sun. Donkeys carry baskets, overflowing with grapes from previous harvests now preserved as sweet wine. Laughter drifts across the countryside, blending with the distant music of shepherds playing simple reed pipes. Demeter walks slowly. There is wisdom in every movement she makes. At last she speaks, not about crops, not about festivals, but about choices. She tells Persephone that every seed buried beneath the earth appears lost before it begins growing again. Many listeners across the centuries heard these words as nothing more than gentle farming wisdom. Others believed Demeter was unknowingly describing the future already waiting for her daughter. Persephone listens carefully. Then she asks a quiet question. Can something disappear without truly being gone? Demeter pauses. The breeze moves softly through nearby cypress branches. For a long moment, even birds seem unwilling to interrupt. Finally, she answers. Love remembers what the eyes cannot always see. The words settle gently into your thoughts. Perhaps they are simply comforting advice from a mother. Or perhaps they are another prophecy hidden inside ordinary conversation. Ancient myths often blur that boundary. As evening approaches once more, Persephone rests beneath an old olive tree overlooking broad valleys washed in golden light. The stone beneath her feels pleasantly warm after holding the day's sunshine. Crickets begin their evening chorus, while swallows glide effortlessly across the fading sky. Without realizing it, she drifts into sleep. Her dream arrives almost immediately. She walks through a palace unlike any she has ever seen. Its halls are carved from black stone polished until they reflect dim blue fire instead of sunlight. Tall columns disappear into darkness above. Strange silver flowers bloom where no rain has ever fallen. At the far end of the great hall stands an empty throne. It waits. No figure sits upon it. No voice explains its purpose. Only a crown rests quietly upon the seat. Fashioned from dark metal that glimmers like stars reflected upon deep water. Before Persephone can step closer, the dream dissolves. She awakens with cool evening air upon her face. The olive branches rustle gently overhead. She remembers every detail, but tells no one. Some surviving traditions never mention such a dream. Others suggest visions like these were signs sent by the Moirai, the ancient fates whose quiet weaving shaped the destinies of both gods and mortals. No one could know which interpretation ancient listeners believed most deeply. Yet one question now lingers beside you as twilight settles across Greece. If the throne was empty, for whom had it always been waiting? Far beneath the warm fields where Demeter's grain bends gently in the wind, lies another kingdom entirely. As dawn spreads across the world above, you begin a different journey, one that leads downward instead of toward the light. Ancient Greeks imagined that the realm of the dead was not a place of flames and endless punishment, but a vast unseen country hidden beneath mountains, valleys, and seas. It was quiet rather than violent, solemn rather than chaotic, ruled by laws as ancient as creation itself. You descend through narrow caverns where cool air brushes against your skin. The scent of damp stone replaces the fragrance of thyme and olive trees. Water drips slowly from unseen ceilings, each sound echoing through darkness that seems to stretch forever. Faint blue light begins to glow ahead, not from the sun, but from strange minerals embedded deep within the earth, giving every cliff and pillar a ghostly radiance. Soon the silence changes. A distant river flows somewhere beyond the shadows. Its current is slow and steady, carrying no laughter, no fishing boats, no children's voices. This is one of the rivers of the underworld. Though ancient storytellers never entirely agreed on which path every soul first crossed, some traditions place the river Styx before all others. Another interpretation suggested the gentle Acheron welcomed ordinary souls, while darker rivers belonged to greater mysteries. The uncertainty itself became part of the myth, reminding listeners that no living person could describe death with complete certainty. Beyond the river rises a city unlike anything beneath the open sky. Its walls are immense, carved from black stone polished smooth through countless ages. Bronze gates tower overhead, decorated not with scenes of conquest, but with symbols of sleep, memory, and eternity. Sacred fires burn in tall braziers, their pale flames never wavering despite the still air. Nothing here appears neglected. Everything is ordered. Everything endures. At the center of this silent kingdom stands its ruler, Hades. Many later generations imagined him as a cruel god delighting in suffering. But the oldest traditions paint a quieter figure. He does not chase endless wars like Ares. He does not boast like Zeus. He does not wander seas in anger like Poseidon. Instead, He governs patiently over a realm that every mortal will eventually enter. He cannot abandon his throne, nor can he refuse those whom fate delivers. You watch him walking through vast palace halls, supported by towering obsidian columns. His robes fall heavily around him, dark as volcanic glass. Upon his brow rests a simple crown worked from precious metals drawn from the deepest parts of the earth. Gems catch the blue firelight, shining like distant stars hidden beneath stone instead of above it. There is power in his presence, but even more noticeable is solitude. Few voices disturb these halls. Only trusted attendants move quietly through endless corridors. The Furies carry out ancient justice. Silent servants tend sacred fires that never die. Shades of kings, poets, mothers, and shepherds drift toward their appointed resting places beneath laws older than Olympus itself. Hades watches all of it, without celebration, without complaint. Some researchers believe this image reflects how ancient Greeks viewed death itself. Death was unavoidable, impartial, and strangely orderly. It spared neither emperor nor farmer, in giving the underworld such a disciplined ruler. They transformed fear into something almost understandable. Yet even immortals know loneliness, as you accompany Hades through a balcony overlooking the asphodel meadows. Countless souls wander peacefully across pale fields, stretching farther than sight can reach. They speak quietly among themselves, remembering fragments of lives now finished. Gentle wind stirs silver grasses beneath a sky that never brightens and never fully darkens. The sight is strangely beautiful, but beautiful does not always mean joyful. Hades stands without speaking for a long time. Then his gaze lifts, not toward the fields, not toward the palace, but upward, toward the unseen world above. He cannot see Persephone through mountains and earth. Yet something draws his thoughts there. Ancient poets offer different explanations. Some say Aphrodite awakened desire within him at Zeus's request. Others claim Eros loosed one silent arrow whose wound no immortal could escape. Another tradition hints that Hades had long observed the balance of life and death and understood that his kingdom alone remained forever without renewal. Historians continue to debate which version came first, but each preserves the same quiet truth. The ruler of the dead had begun longing for companionship, not conquest, not amusement, someone who could share eternity. Days pass within the underworld. Though time moves differently here, Hades fulfills every duty expected of him. Newly arrived souls are judged. Oaths sworn upon the Styx remain unbroken. Precious metals slowly grow within hidden caverns, enriching the earth above without mortals ever seeing their birthplace. Still, his thoughts often wander. One evening, as blue flames flicker softly through the throne room, an unexpected visitor arrives. Hermes, the swift messenger, steps lightly across polished stone, his winged sandals making almost no sound. He carries neither laughter nor mischief today. His expression remains thoughtful. The two gods speak privately. No servant approaches close enough to hear. You notice only fragments. The name of Zeus, the surface world, and finally, Persephone. Hades listens without interruption. His face reveals almost nothing. Only after Hermes departs does he remain seated in silence, one hand resting thoughtfully upon the arm of his throne. Outside, somewhere beyond the palace walls, Cerberus lifts all three heads at once. The great guardian does not bark. He simply stares toward the distant passage leading upward, as though sensing change approaching. The ancient Greeks often believed that animals perceived divine movements long before people did. Dogs, in particular, occupied a mysterious place within religious imagination, standing beside boundaries between worlds. Whether Cerberus truly sensed destiny, or whether later storytellers added the detail afterward, remains uncertain. Either way, the moment feels significant. Several nights later, Hades leaves the palace alone. He rides a black chariot drawn by immortal horses whose hooves strike sparks from ancient stone. The vehicle climbs hidden roads, winding toward the upper world. stopping just beneath the roots of mountains where sunlight never reaches. He does not emerge. Not yet. Instead, he waits, patiently. The silence around him is complete. Above his head, separated only by layers of earth, Persephone walks through flowering fields without knowing how near the unseen kingdom has become. Far away on Olympus, Zeus gazes across the heavens with a seriousness rarely noticed by other gods. He understands what is being considered. He also understands that whatever choice he makes will forever change both the world above and the world below. No thunder rolls. No proclamation echoes across the sky. Only one quiet decision still waiting to be spoken. And somewhere beneath the roots of the earth, the king of the underworld continues waiting with a patience that feels almost as ancient as fate itself. Another peaceful morning rises across the valleys of Greece. And nothing in the gentle light suggests that this day will be remembered for thousands of years. The mountains glow softly beneath the first touch of sunrise. Thin streams wind through flowering meadows, reflecting pale clouds that drift lazily across an endless blue sky. Shepherds guide their flocks toward higher pastures, while fishermen pull small boats away from quiet harbors. Temple bells ring faintly from distant sanctuaries, their sound carried across the countryside by a cool breeze scented with rosemary and pine. You walk once more beside Persephone. She seems lighter than ever. The strange dream beneath the olive tree has faded into the quiet corners of memory, though it has never completely disappeared. From time to time, she still remembers the empty throne waiting beneath the earth. But each time she recalls it, the image slips away like mist beneath the morning sun. Today she wishes only to gather flowers. Her companions laugh as they wander ahead, carrying woven baskets trimmed with fresh ivy. Their sandals brush gently through long grasses filled with poppies, violets, crocuses, and white lilies opening toward the warmth of the new day. Bees drift lazily between blossoms, while bright butterflies circle above the meadow in slow, effortless patterns. It feels impossible to imagine sorrow here. The earth itself seems to breathe peacefully. Ancient listeners would have recognized this landscape immediately. Such meadows were more than beautiful places. They represented the harmony between humanity, nature, and the divine order. Every flower carried meaning. Every spring belonged to a nymph. Every grove might shelter a forgotten shrine where travelers paused to offer a handful of grain or a few drops of wine before continuing their journey. Nothing in Greece was ever entirely ordinary. Even beauty could become sacred. As the morning grows warmer, Persephone kneels beside a cluster of pale irises glistening with dew. She carefully gathers only a few, leaving most untouched. Her companions tease her gently for always taking fewer flowers than anyone else. She smiles. "If they remain," she says quietly, "someone else may enjoy them tomorrow." The simple kindness lingers in your thoughts. Many centuries later, poets would remember Persephone not only for becoming queen of the underworld, but also for the quiet compassion she carried long before her destiny unfolded. The breeze shifts, not suddenly, almost gently. A faint scent begins drifting across the meadow, unlike any flower growing nearby. It is sweeter than jasmine, richer than honey. Even the birds seem to pause. Persephone slowly lifts her head. Far across the field, something shines. At first you mistake it for sunlight reflecting upon white stone. Then the light moves softly with the breeze. It is a flower, unlike any you have ever seen. Its petals gleam with impossible brightness, almost as though tiny stars have settled upon them. The blossom rises alone from the center of the meadow, untouched by surrounding grasses. No other flower grows beside it. The companions notice it as well. One laughs softly. "I have never seen anything so beautiful." Another suggests bringing it to Demeter as an offering. Yet none of them approaches, for reasons they cannot explain. They simply remain where they are. Only Persephone begins walking forward. Some surviving versions of the myth describe this extraordinary blossom as a narcissus created by Gaia herself at the request of Zeus. Others merely speak of a miraculous flower whose beauty exceeded every ordinary bloom. Historians continue debating whether the narcissus carried symbolic meaning connected with death long before this story emerged, or whether the myth itself transformed the flower into an enduring symbol, whatever its origin. The blossom seems to possess a quiet invitation impossible to ignore. Each step Persephone takes feels perfectly natural. The grass brushes softly against her ankles. Warm sunlight rests upon her shoulders. Nothing appears threatening. Even you feel drawn toward the flower. Halfway across the meadow, another small sign appears. The wind stops completely. Leaves become still. The buzzing of bees fades into silence. No bird sings for one suspended moment. The entire countryside seems to hold its breath. Far away, upon Olympus, Demeter suddenly pauses in conversation with another goddess. She looks toward the distant horizon. Her expression changes, only slightly. A mother's heart sometimes notices what no prophecy reveals. She cannot explain why. She simply feels uneasy. Back in the meadow, Persephone now stands only a few steps from the miraculous flower. Its fragrance surrounds her. Sweet, fresh, almost familiar. She reaches forward. The instant her fingertips brush the stem, the earth answers, not with an explosion, not with thunder, but with a deep, slow sound. A low rumble rises from beneath your feet, like ancient stone awakening after endless sleep. Tiny cracks spread quietly through the meadow. At first they seem no wider than threads woven across soft soil. Then they widen. The ground begins to separate. Grass folds inward. Flowers disappear into darkness. The bright meadow tears open before your eyes. Persephone steps backward in shock. Her companions scream. Birds burst upward into the sky. From the opening below emerges something magnificent and terrifying. 4 immortal horses, blacker than moonless night, surge upward in perfect formation. Their manes flow like smoke. Their eyes shine with strange silver light. Every breath escaping their nostrils carries cool mist instead of warmth. Behind them rises a great chariot forged from dark metal polished brighter than obsidian. Upon it stands Hades. He does not shout. He does not threaten. His expression remains solemn, almost sorrowful, as though he already understands the pain this moment will bring. The earth around the chariot does not burn. Instead, wildflowers nearest the opening gently bow toward it, as though recognizing an authority older than mountains themselves. Ancient audiences often viewed this scene differently than modern readers do. Some saw an act of divine authority arranged among the gods. Others focused upon the tragedy experienced by Demeter and Persephone. Still others interpreted the descent as symbolic of every young person eventually leaving childhood behind. None of these meanings entirely replaces the others. The myth remains layered. Hades extends one hand. Persephone stares at him, frozen between disbelief and fear. Neither speaks. For one impossible heartbeat, time itself seems unwilling to move. Then another sound echoes across the valley. Not thunder, not the breaking earth. A cry. It comes from somewhere far beyond the meadow. Perhaps from a distant goddess, perhaps from fate itself. Ancient storytellers never fully agreed. Even now, scholars continue wondering whose voice first witnessed the beginning of Persephone's descent. Only one certainty remains. The peaceful world that greeted sunrise will never exist in quite the same way again. The meadow still blooms. The mountains still stand. The sea continues striking distant cliffs. Yet beneath every flower now lies the memory of hidden depths. And as the chariot waits beside the open earth, destiny reaches out its hand, asking Persephone to cross a threshold from which no soul, mortal or divine, can ever truly return unchanged for one suspended heartbeat. The meadow exists between two worlds. Above, sunlight still warms the hillsides, and gentle clouds drift across the sky as though nothing extraordinary has happened. Below, an immense darkness waits beyond the opening earth, its cool breath rising into the fragrant air of spring. You stand close enough to hear both the distant song of larks overhead and the deep rumble echoing from unseen caverns far beneath your feet. Persephone cannot move. Her companions scatter in every direction, their baskets tumbling into the grass as flowers spill across the ground. Their frightened voices blend into a single cry that races over the valley toward forests, villages, and mountain shrines. Hades remains perfectly still. The black horses stamp their hooves impatiently. Yet their master offers no command. His expression is difficult to read. There is determination within it, but also restraint, almost as though he understands that even the fulfillment of destiny carries sorrow. Ancient poets describe this moment with remarkable simplicity. They rarely fill it with long speeches or dramatic arguments. Instead, silence itself becomes part of the story. The gods often act without explaining every reason, leaving later generations to wonder whether fate speaks most clearly through words never spoken. Then the stillness breaks. Hades steps forward. His movements are calm rather than hurried. The heavy folds of his dark robe sway gently as he reaches Persephone. She tries to retreat, but the ground behind her continues trembling, making every step uncertain. The miraculous Narcissus has already disappeared into the widening earth, as though it never existed at all. She calls for her mother. The sound carries across the meadow with heartbreaking clarity. "Daughter of Demeter," Hades says quietly, his voice deep as distant thunder beneath stone. "Do not fear the road that has already been woven." His words offer no comfort. Perhaps they are not meant to. Some later traditions imagine Hades speaking gently. Others describe complete silence. Historians continue to debate whether ancient audiences preferred a ruler whose authority required few words, or whether later storytellers softened his character over time. The uncertainty remains, much like the mystery surrounding many of Greece's oldest myths. Persephone struggles, not with anger born of hatred, but with the instinctive fear of someone whose familiar world is suddenly vanishing. Her hands reach toward the bright meadow, toward the warm sky, toward everything she has always known. Hades lifts her into the waiting chariot. The horses rear together. Their silver eyes flash beneath the sunlight for the first and last time. Then they descend. The earth closes around them with astonishing speed. Great slabs of stone slide silently back into place. Fresh grass settles across the meadow. Wildflowers sway gently once more beneath the breeze. Within moments, only scattered baskets remain. It is as though the land itself has swallowed every trace of what occurred. Only Persephone's companions remain kneeling in frightened disbelief. Some weep openly. Others stare at the ground where the opening once stood, unable to understand how solid earth could betray them so completely. Far away, another witness has seen everything. High above the valley, the goddess Hecate stands at the entrance of a lonely cave, where she has long guarded crossroads and hidden places. The faint echo of Persephone's cry reaches her ears. She does not see the entire event. She sees only shadows. She hears only the desperate call carried upon the wind. Yet she immediately senses that a boundary between worlds has shifted. The ancient Greeks often honored Hecate wherever roads divided or decisions became uncertain. It feels fitting that she becomes one of the first divine witnesses to this mysterious turning point. Even so, surviving traditions differ. Some emphasize what she heard rather than what she saw, preserving the uncertainty that makes her testimony so compelling. Below the earth, the journey continues. The chariot races through immense tunnels illuminated by veins of pale crystal glowing within ancient rock. Cool air rushes past, carrying the scent of damp stone, mineral springs, and roots stretching downward from forests far above. Persephone grips the side of the chariot, her breathing uneven as daylight rapidly disappears behind them. She looks back. At first, she can still see a small circle of blue sky, then only a distant glimmer. Finally, nothing. Darkness surrounds the passage, softened only by the strange blue fires burning at intervals along the hidden road. They cast no comforting warmth. Yet they reveal magnificent underground landscapes impossible to imagine from the surface. Vast caverns stretch endlessly outward. Underground rivers shimmer beneath natural bridges. Giant crystal formations sparkle like frozen constellations suspended within the earth itself. Even in fear, Persephone cannot entirely ignore the beauty surrounding her. The underworld is not empty. It is ancient, older than kingdoms, older than temples, perhaps older than memory. Hades notices her gaze wandering across the cavern walls. "This kingdom," he says after a long silence, "belongs to those whom time has gathered." Persephone says nothing. She turns away. The quiet between them grows heavy once more. Above, Demeter suddenly stops walking. She has been blessing fields near a small farming village when an overwhelming feeling sweeps through her without warning. The basket of barley she carries slips gently from her hands. Golden grain scatters across the ground. Every bird nearby takes flight. A cold wind moves through ripe wheat, although the afternoon remains warm. Demeter closes her eyes. She hears nothing. Yet every mother's instinct tells her something impossible has happened. Persephone. She whispers the name only once. No answer comes. Some researchers believe myths such as this capture emotional truths more enduring than historical events. The sudden knowledge shared between mother and child appears in countless cultures, suggesting that love itself often becomes a kind of invisible prophecy. Whether ancient worshippers interpreted this literally or symbolically may never be fully known. Deep beneath the earth, the chariot begins slowing. Ahead rises the first great gate of the underworld. It towers above the road, carved from black basalt, streaked with silver minerals that gleam beneath eternal blue fire. Bronze doors stand open, guarded not by armies, but by silence itself. Then another figure appears. Cerberus, the enormous hound, lifts three powerful heads as the chariot approaches. Each pair of glowing eyes studies Persephone carefully. His massive body blocks the gateway. Yet when Hades steps forward, the guardian lowers every head in perfect obedience. One head watches Hades, one watches the shadows behind them. The third never takes its eyes from Persephone. Strangely, it does not growl. Instead, it gives a single quiet whine, so soft you almost wonder whether you imagined it. Ancient storytellers rarely explain this detail. But later traditions sometimes imagined that even Cerberus recognized innocence entering a realm from which few returned willingly. Another interpretation survives in which the guardians sensed that the young goddess would one day become its queen. No certainty remains, only possibility, as the great gates slowly close behind the chariot. The echo rolls across the endless caverns, like distant thunder fading beneath mountains. Far above, sunlight still bathes the meadow where flowers continue blooming. Yet beneath those peaceful fields, Persephone has crossed a threshold no prophecy could fully describe. The journey that began among blossoms now leads toward a throne glimpsed once in a forgotten dream. And neither she nor the world above can yet imagine the price that dream will demand. The sun continues its slow passage across the heavens. Yet, for Demeter, time no longer moves with its familiar rhythm. The fields remain green. The vineyards still shimmer beneath warm light. And fishermen continue casting their nets into quiet coastal waters, unaware that the balance sustaining every harvest has begun to fracture. You leave the hidden kingdom below and return once more to the living world, where the first true grief of the story now begins to unfold. Demeter walks quickly across the meadow where Persephone had gathered flowers only hours before. The baskets remain scattered exactly where frightened companions abandoned them. Crimson poppies lie crushed beneath hurried footsteps. A wreath of fresh violets rests upon the grass, already beginning to wilt beneath the afternoon sun. But Persephone is gone. The earth shows no wound, no broken stone, no opening leading downward. Only ordinary grass moves gently beneath the breeze. The goddess kneels and presses one hand against the soil. It feels warm, peaceful, almost innocent. Yet beneath her fingertips, she senses something hidden, something buried so deeply that even her divine sight cannot immediately reach it. The companions approach slowly, still trembling from what they witnessed. Their voices break as they attempt to describe the impossible. The strange flower, the trembling earth, the dark chariot, the silent ruler rising from beneath the world. Every account agrees on the same terrible ending. Persephone disappeared into the ground itself. Demeter listens without interruption. When the last frightened voice falls silent, she closes her eyes. No tears come, not yet. Grief has not fully found its shape. Instead, there is disbelief, that quiet refusal to accept what every witness insists is true. She rises. "There must be another path," she whispers. And so the search begins. Ancient storytellers often linger over these wandering days because they reveal another side of Demeter rarely seen in peaceful harvest festivals. She is no longer simply the giver of grain. She becomes a mother whose love refuses to yield before uncertainty. The fields she once nurtured are forgotten. Every road now has only one purpose: to find her daughter. You follow her along dusty roads, connecting villages where evening markets are beginning to close. Potters stack newly fired jars outside their workshops. Bakers remove warm loaves from clay ovens, their rich aroma drifting into narrow streets. Merchants lower woven awnings while children chase one another between stone fountains. Demeter questions everyone: old shepherds, young fishermen, travelers arriving from distant islands, priests tending forgotten shrines. No one has seen Persephone. Some offer sympathy, others lower their eyes, frightened by the sorrow visible even in a goddess. As night falls, Demeter refuses to rest. She tears burning branches from a sacred altar and fashions 2 great torches whose flames rise steadily into the darkness. Their golden light dances across marble walls, olive groves, and rocky hillsides as she continues walking beneath countless stars. The sight becomes unforgettable. A lone goddess carrying twin flames through the sleeping world, searching, always searching. Some researchers believe this image inspired later religious processions in which worshippers carried torches during ceremonies honoring Demeter and Persephone. Archaeological discoveries at Eleusis reveal that torchlight played an important role in sacred rituals, perhaps preserving memories of this very journey. Whether history or devotion shaped the tradition first remains uncertain. Either way, the torches continue burning. Several nights pass. Demeter crosses mountain passes where cold mist gathers before dawn. She enters forests filled with towering pines whose branches whisper endlessly above hidden animal paths. She kneels beside springs, sacred to forgotten nymphs, and questions river gods flowing patiently toward the sea. None can answer. The silence itself begins to feel unnatural, far away. Olympus remains strangely quiet. Zeus watches. Hera watches. Apollo guides the sun as faithfully as ever. The gods know more than they admit. Yet no one approaches Demeter. The absence of comfort becomes another wound. Ancient listeners may have wondered why Zeus delayed speaking. Some traditions suggest he believed the decision already served the greater order of the cosmos. Others portray him wrestling privately with consequences he had failed to anticipate. Historians continue debating how different regions understood the king of the gods in this difficult episode. The uncertainty survives, perhaps intentionally. One evening, while Demeter walks beside a lonely coastline where waves strike weathered cliffs beneath a silver moon, another figure steps quietly from the shadows. It is Hecate. She carries her own torch, though its flame burns with an unusual pale glow. "I heard her voice," Hecate says softly. Demeter immediately turns. "You saw her. Only shadows. Who took her?" Hecate lowers her eyes. "I cannot speak with certainty." The answer offers little comfort, yet it offers something almost as valuable: a witness. Together, they continue searching through the night. Their torches move slowly across rocky paths overlooking the sea. Salt air fills your lungs, while waves crash rhythmically below. Above, the stars remain astonishingly bright, reflected upon black water stretching toward distant islands. The world remains beautiful. Beauty, however, has become almost painful. Every flowering tree reminds Demeter of Persephone. Every young girl's laughter heard from distant villages echoes like memory. On the 9th day of searching, exhaustion finally reaches even a goddess. She pauses beside an ancient spring surrounded by cypress trees older than many kingdoms. The water flows silently across polished stones, carrying fallen leaves toward a stream disappearing into the valley below. There, for the first time, Demeter weeps, not loudly, not dramatically, only quiet tears falling into clear water. The spring carries them away. Ancient Greeks often regarded flowing water as a bridge between worlds. Some later storytellers believed springs remembered every sorrow poured into them. Another interpretation suggests these tears symbolize the first moisture withdrawn from the fields, hinting at the famine still waiting beyond the horizon. As dawn approaches, a brilliant light suddenly spreads across the eastern sky. Not ordinary sunrise, brighter, warmer. Apollo's chariot climbs steadily above the mountains. The god of the sun has seen everything from the heavens. He cannot hide forever. Demeter turns toward the growing light. Hope and fear meet within her at once. If anyone knows the truth, it is the one who watches every road beneath the open sky. Yet another question quietly remains. Will the truth bring comfort, or only deeper sorrow? The twin torches continue burning as the first sunlight touches their flames. And you realize that the long search has reached its first true turning point. The meadow where Persephone vanished now lies far behind, but its memory follows every step. The blue flame upon the altar, the ravens circling above the hills, the dream of the empty throne, and the miraculous flower all return to your thoughts, each small omen now fitting together like pieces of a design that only fate could fully understand. Somewhere beneath the earth, Persephone begins to learn the shape of an unfamiliar kingdom. Somewhere above it, her mother walks toward an answer she has both sought and dreaded. Between them lies the whole weight of the world. 9 days have passed since Persephone vanished beneath the flowering meadow, and the world no longer feels quite the same. You notice it first in small, almost invisible ways. The breeze carries less fragrance than before. The songs of birds seem shorter, as though they end before reaching their fullest melody. Farmers still work their fields from sunrise until evening, yet many pause from time to time, looking toward the horizon without understanding why an uneasy feeling has settled over their hearts. Demeter has not stopped searching. Her twin torches have burned through darkness after darkness, their flames becoming familiar to travelers crossing lonely roads beneath the stars. Dust clings to the hem of her robe, her golden hair, once carefully adorned with fresh grain and flowers, now hangs loosely around her shoulders. She no longer resembles the radiant goddess celebrated in harvest festivals. She resembles every mother who has refused to surrender hope. You continue beside her as she climbs another rocky hillside, overlooking broad valleys dotted with villages and olive orchards. Morning mist drifts slowly through the cypress trees, softening every distant outline until mountains appear like fading memories. At last, she reaches the palace of Helios. The great sun god sees all that happens beneath the open sky. No cloud conceals the world from his chariot. No mountain blocks his gaze. If anyone knows the truth, it is he. The palace gleams with polished bronze, so bright that it almost seems forged from sunlight itself. Marble steps shimmer beneath warm golden light. Incense burns quietly before enormous columns decorated with carved images of horses pulling the solar chariot across the heavens. Helios receives Demeter with solemn respect. There is no celebration, no formal greeting, only silence. Demeter speaks first. You have seen every road. I have. You have watched every valley. I have. Then tell me where my daughter has gone. The old god lowers his head before answering. For the first time since the search began, certainty enters the story. It was Hades. The words fall gently, yet they strike harder than thunder. Helios explains that the ruler of the underworld rose from beneath the earth in his black chariot and carried Persephone away. More painful still, he reveals that Zeus himself permitted the marriage. Demeter does not interrupt. She simply listens. When Helios finishes, the quiet becomes almost unbearable. The ancient Greeks often portrayed Helios as an impartial witness. He does not judge. He merely reveals what his light has seen. Some scholars believe this role reflects the sun itself, shining equally upon justice and injustice without altering either. Another interpretation suggests that truth, once illuminated, cannot easily be hidden again. Demeter turns away. She speaks no farewell. She offers no blessing. She simply leaves. As you descend the marble steps beside her, you notice something changing within the goddess. The desperate search is over. A different emotion now takes its place. Resolve. If Zeus will not restore her daughter, then the earth itself will answer. Days later, Demeter arrives at the city of Eleusis. Unlike the grand sanctuaries of Olympus, Eleusis feels warmly human. Narrow streets wind between stone homes shaded by fig trees. Potters shape fresh clay outside their workshops, while women grind barley upon smooth millstones. Children chase one another beside small fountains fed by cool spring water. The smell of baking bread drifts through open doorways. Here, life continues with comforting simplicity, yet Demeter no longer wishes to be recognized. She wraps herself in the appearance of an elderly woman, bending her divine radiance beneath the disguise of age. Her once brilliant clothing becomes plain and weathered. Her shining hair turns gray. Even her voice grows softer. The transformation surprises you. Among the Olympians, disguises are common. But this one feels different. She does not hide for amusement. She hides because grief has made her wish for solitude. Near an ancient, well known to later generations as the Maiden's Well, Demeter sits quietly beneath the shade of an olive tree. Young women from the household of King Celeus soon arrive carrying water jars upon their shoulders. They notice the lonely stranger immediately. One of them speaks gently. "Mother, you look weary." Demeter smiles faintly. "I have traveled farther than these feet wish to go." The daughters offer her food and water without hesitation. Hospitality held sacred importance in ancient Greece. Welcoming strangers honored Zeus himself, who protected guests and travelers. Listeners hearing this story would immediately recognize the kindness shown by these young women as an example of proper human virtue. Small acts of generosity often become great moments within mythology. The daughters invite the elderly traveler to their father's palace. Demeter accepts. The royal household receives her warmly, never guessing that the quiet old woman entering their halls is the very goddess whose blessing sustains every harvest throughout Greece. Inside the palace, polished stone floors remain pleasantly cool beneath bare feet. Cedar beams support high ceilings, darkened by years of fragrant smoke from sacred hearths. Lamps, fueled by olive oil, cast gentle light across woven tapestries, showing scenes of fertile fields and peaceful festivals. Queen Metnera welcomes the stranger with genuine compassion. She soon entrusts Demeter with caring for her infant son, Demophon. The goddess accepts the child tenderly. Holding him awakens memories she has struggled to quiet. Persephone. As days pass, something remarkable happens. Demeter begins loving the infant as though he were her own grandson. She smiles more often. She sings ancient lullabies forgotten by nearly everyone else. The palace servants notice that flowers bloom unusually brightly around the nursery windows. Hope flickers again, yet sorrow never completely leaves. Each evening, after the household falls asleep, Demeter performs a secret ritual. She carries little Demophon toward the great hearth where sacred fire burns low through the night. Instead of harming him, she gently passes him through the divine flames, burning away mortal weakness little by little. Then she anoints his body with fragrant ambrosia. Her intention is extraordinary. She wishes to grant the child immortality. Some surviving traditions describe this ritual in vivid detail, while others leave parts of it mysterious. Historians continue debating whether these passages preserve memories of ancient initiation ceremonies later echoed in the Eleusinian mysteries. Whatever the truth, the goddess acts entirely from kindness. Night after night, the ritual continues unseen, until one evening, Queen Metanira awakens unexpectedly. She hears movement within the nursery. Quietly, she approaches, peering through the doorway. She sees the impossible, her infant son resting within sacred fire. She cries out in terror. The sound echoes through the palace. Demeter immediately lifts the unharmed child from the flames. The ritual is broken. The silence afterward feels even heavier than the queen's frightened scream. For a long moment, neither woman speaks. Then the old disguise begins to disappear. Light gathers around Demeter like dawn rising inside the palace itself. Her gray hair becomes golden once more. Her worn clothing shines with divine splendor. The fragrance of fresh grain and flowering fields fills every hall. The royal family falls to their knees. The goddess does not punish them. She understands a mother's fear because it mirrors her own. Yet she speaks with quiet sadness. You have interrupted a gift that could never be completed. Persephone will live. He will become honored among men. But immortality has slipped away forever. Outside, a cool wind passes through the olive trees surrounding Eleusis. Some say it carried another warning. Others believe it announced the beginning of sacred mysteries that would one day draw pilgrims from every corner of Greece. No one listening that night could have imagined how deeply this quiet city would become, forever linked to Persephone's story. And while Demeter remains among mortals, refusing to return to Olympus, the fields beyond Eleusis begin changing in ways no farmer yet understands. The first stalks of grain hesitate before growing. The earth is beginning to remember its grief. The first signs are so subtle that almost no one notices them. A farmer walks into his barley field one quiet morning expecting to see fresh green shoots reaching toward the sun. Instead, he finds the earth strangely still. The seeds have not died. Yet neither have they awakened. They rest beneath the soil as though waiting for a command that never arrives. He kneels, scoops a handful of cool earth into his palm, and lets it slip slowly through his fingers. Everything feels normal, and yet something is missing. Across Greece, thousands of similar moments unfold beneath the same bright sky. Vineyard keepers notice that young vines seem reluctant to climb their wooden supports. Fig trees hold tightly to their blossoms instead of allowing fruit to form. Shepherds lead healthy flocks through familiar pastures, only to discover that the grasses have stopped growing. No storm has passed. No drought has begun. The sun still shines. Rain still falls. But the living earth has quietly withdrawn into itself. You understand what the mortals cannot. Demeter has stopped giving her blessing. She remains within Eleusis, neither returning to Olympus nor resuming her sacred duties. Every day, she walks beyond the city walls into silent fields where she gazes across the countryside without speaking. Farmers greet the quiet woman they know only as the mysterious stranger who later revealed herself as a goddess, but none dare interrupt her thoughts. Grief has become heavier than harvest. Ancient Greek religion rested upon the belief that gods and mortals depended upon one another in unexpected ways. Human beings offered sacrifices, prayers, and festivals. In return, the gods maintained the balance of nature. This story gently reminds listeners that even divine order could tremble when love was broken. Days become weeks. The change can no longer be ignored. Marketplaces that once overflowed with baskets of grain begin looking strangely empty. Bakers use smaller measures of flour. Olive merchants quietly raise their prices, hoping the shortages will soon pass. Fishing villages continue bringing home their daily catch. But fish alone cannot feed entire kingdoms. You wander through one bustling harbor that now feels unusually subdued. Ships still arrive carrying painted pottery, woven cloth, bronze tools, and fragrant wine from distant islands. Yet many captains ask the same troubling question before unloading their cargo. How are the harvests inland? No answer brings comfort. At sanctuaries dedicated to Demeter, priests continue lighting sacred fires each morning. The scent of incense still rises toward the heavens. Worshippers still lay fresh bread upon stone altars, but each offering grows smaller. The irony is impossible to ignore. Bread is now offered to the goddess, whose sorrow has halted the growing of grain itself. Some historians believe this portion of the myth reflects memories of genuine agricultural crises experienced by ancient communities. Others argue that the famine serves primarily as a symbolic expression of maternal grief, powerful enough to reshape the natural world. Perhaps both interpretations carry truth, woven together across centuries of storytelling. On Olympus, concern begins spreading among the gods. Zeus watches the earth from his shining throne. The smoke rising from countless sacrifices appears thinner than before. At first, the difference is almost invisible. Then each passing day makes it clearer. Mortals cannot offer what they no longer possess. Without harvests, the temples grow quiet. Poseidon arrives first, carrying the scent of sea wind and salt upon his robes. The ports are restless, he says. Apollo follows. My oracles speak of growing fear, Athena adds quietly. Cities cannot flourish without bread. Even Hermes, who delights in constant movement between gods and mortals, reports seeing roads increasingly filled with hungry travelers searching for food. Only Demeter remains absent. Her empty place within the council speaks louder than any accusation. Zeus says little, but his silence has changed. Earlier, it was the silence of confidence. Now, it carries uncertainty, far below the earth. Persephone begins noticing subtle changes of her own. The palace of Hades remains peaceful, governed with the same patient order she first encountered upon her arrival. Blue flames continue illuminating polished halls carved from ancient stone. Silent rivers flow endlessly beneath towering caverns. The souls arriving each day are welcomed, according to laws unchanged since the beginning of time. Yet whispers now reach even the underworld. Newly arrived shades speak softly among themselves. The crops failed. Our children worried. The villages prayed without answer. Persephone listens. A quiet ache forms within her. She realizes the suffering above has begun because of her absence. Not through any choice she has made, simply because she is gone. Hades notices her growing sadness. One evening he finds her standing beside a dark river whose still surface reflects neither sun nor moon. Only faint blue lights trembling beneath the cavern ceiling. You miss the world above, Persephone answers honestly. I miss my mother. There is no anger in her voice now, only longing. Hades looks toward the distant darkness, where countless souls continue their slow journeys. I have ruled here longer than mountains remember, he says quietly. Every soul I receive leaves someone grieving. He pauses. But I had never understood that grief until now. The confession surprises you. It surprises Persephone as well. For the first time, she sees not merely the ruler who carried her away, but an immortal who has spent eternity surrounded by separation. Some later writers emphasize this growing understanding between them, while earlier hymns remain more restrained. Historians continue debating how ancient audiences imagined their relationship evolving during these unseen months beneath the earth. The mystery remains. Above, the famine deepens. Children ask why orchards no longer bloom. Old women remember difficult years from long ago, but confess they have never witnessed anything quite like this. Even sacred groves begin losing leaves before their proper season. One evening, as crimson sunset spreads across the hills of Eleusis, Demeter climbs a lonely ridge overlooking miles of silent farmland. She kneels, places both hands upon the earth. Then she makes a vow. Until Persephone is returned, nothing shall grow. The wind rises immediately. Dark clouds gather far beyond the western sea, though no storm had been expected. Ravens circle above abandoned fields. The sacred fires burning within distant temples flicker strangely, their flames leaning eastward as though acknowledging the goddess's words. Ancient listeners would have recognized this as more than anger. It was a divine oath. Among the Olympians, such vows carried tremendous power. Breaking them threatened the order of the cosmos itself. That same night, Zeus finally understands the full measure of what has begun. It is no longer simply the sorrow of a mother. It is the slow unraveling of the bond between gods and humanity. If mortals perish, who will tend the temples? Who will pour wine upon the altar? Who will sing the hymns that have echoed across Greece for generations? The king of the gods rises from his throne. Around him, Olympus grows unusually quiet. Far below, in both the world of sunlight and the kingdom beneath the earth, destiny waits once more. The first omens foretold an unseen descent. Now a second warning stands before heaven itself. Unless the divided family of the gods is made whole again, the earth may soon forget how to bloom, while the earth above grows quieter with every passing week. Another rhythm slowly reveals itself beneath the world of sunlight. You descend once again through ancient caverns, where blue fire glows against polished stone and underground rivers murmur through darkness that has never known dawn. What first appeared frightening now begins to unfold with unexpected complexity. The underworld is not frozen in despair. It is a kingdom that never sleeps, where every arriving soul carries the final echo of a life once lived. Persephone has now spent many days within these endless halls. The fear that filled her first journey has softened, though it has not disappeared. She still dreams of warm fields, flowering orchards, and Demeter's gentle embrace. Sometimes she awakens expecting to hear birds outside her window, only to find silent crystal caverns reflecting pale blue flames instead of morning light. Yet each day she notices something new. The palace itself is astonishingly beautiful. Its walls are carved from dark marble veined with silver that catches every flicker of sacred fire. High ceilings disappear into shadow, supported by immense columns sculpted with vines, pomegranates, and flowing rivers rather than scenes of conquest. Water falls gently through hidden channels into still pools where pale lilies bloom despite never receiving sunlight. Nothing feels neglected, nothing feels cruel, only solemn. Ancient Greek imagination rarely pictured the underworld as a place of endless punishment for ordinary people. Most souls entered a peaceful existence shaped more by memory than suffering. The truly wicked faced justice elsewhere, while heroes and the blessed found different resting places for most. The kingdom simply reflected the quiet certainty that every human journey eventually reaches its final shore. Persephone begins walking its halls alone. At first, the palace servants bow respectfully, but speak very little. Their movements remain careful and measured, as though silence itself were part of the kingdom's law. Gradually, however, they begin greeting her more warmly. A servant offers fresh water gathered from an underground spring, said to have flowed since the birth of the Titans. Another brings flowers cultivated in hidden gardens, where luminous moss paints the pathways with gentle emerald light. Even here, life continues. You follow Persephone into one of those remarkable gardens. Instead of sunlight, enormous crystals suspended from cavern ceilings bathe everything in soft silver radiance. White blossoms open slowly beneath that strange light. Dark ivy climbs ancient stone walls. Tiny streams weave quietly among smooth rocks, their waters so clear that every pebble resting beneath them remains perfectly visible. A cool fragrance fills the air, not the sweetness of spring meadows, something calmer, something older. Perhaps the scent of stone after rain, perhaps roots reaching patiently through the deep earth. Persephone kneels beside one unusual flower, unlike any growing in the world above. Its petals shimmer with faint violet light. Opening only in darkness, she smiles sadly. So beauty exists here too. The quiet words linger. Sometimes acceptance begins not with great decisions, but with the simple recognition that unfamiliar places possess their own quiet wonders. Later that day, Hades invites Persephone to accompany him through parts of the kingdom few living beings could ever imagine. They pass the broad asphodel meadows, where countless ordinary souls wander peacefully beneath an endless twilight sky. Men and women who once lived as shepherds, sailors, mothers, poets, merchants, and kings move gently across silver grasses while speaking softly of memories, slowly becoming dreams. No one rushes. Time itself seems to breathe differently. Some shades recognize Persephone immediately. They bow with quiet respect. Others simply watch her pass, with expressions impossible to fully understand. Hope, curiosity, perhaps recognition of a change not yet complete. Historians continue debating whether ancient worshippers already viewed Persephone as sharing authority beside Hades from the beginning of her stay, or whether that role developed gradually through later traditions. The surviving evidence preserves both possibilities, allowing the mystery to remain beautifully unresolved. The journey continues toward the Hall of Judgment. There, 3 ancient judges receive newly arrived souls with calm impartiality. Their voices remain gentle, yet every decision carries eternal consequence. Persephone watches quietly. She had imagined only sorrow waiting here. Instead, she witnesses fairness, compassion, order. Hades speaks little. He simply performs his duties with unwavering patience. For the first time, Persephone begins understanding the weight carried by the ruler beside her. Every farewell spoken in the world above eventually reaches his kingdom. Every ending becomes his responsibility. There is no holiday from death, no season when grief rests. The realization does not erase what happened in the flowering meadow, but it changes something within her. Understanding begins where certainty once stood. That evening, Persephone climbs a balcony overlooking a dark river winding endlessly through the kingdom. Far above, beyond countless layers of earth and stone, the living world continues beneath stars she cannot see. She closes her eyes. I wonder if my mother still searches. The words are almost carried away by the gentle current below. Behind her, unseen, Hades hears the question. He does not answer immediately. Finally, he says, "A mother's love rarely accepts silence." The remark contains no defense, no excuse, only truth. The 2 immortals stand together without speaking further. Sometimes silence itself becomes conversation. That night, Persephone dreams again. She finds herself standing inside the great hall she glimpsed beneath the olive tree so long ago. The same throne waits at the far end beneath towering columns of black stone. Yet this time the hall is not empty. A single torch burns beside the throne. Its flame shifts gently between gold and blue. No voice commands her forward. No hand guides her. She simply walks. As she approaches, the crown resting upon the throne begins reflecting both colors together, until warm sunlight and cool darkness seem woven into one quiet light. Just before she reaches it, she awakens. The dream leaves her with more questions than answers. Was it prophecy, memory, or merely the longing of a lonely heart trying to understand an unfamiliar future? Ancient storytellers never agreed. Perhaps they were never meant to. The greatest myths often leave room for wonder. Far above, Demeter continues watching barren fields beneath fading autumn light. Far below, Persephone slowly begins seeing the hidden order within the land she never wished to enter. Between mother and daughter stretches an invisible thread no distance can sever. Yet another thread has begun forming as well, not forged through joy, not through force alone, but through shared solitude. Neither Persephone nor Hades fully understands what destiny is quietly weaving around them. Only the old dream remains. The empty throne no longer feels entirely empty, and somewhere within the deep silence of the underworld, the first faint outline of a queen begins to emerge. Time passes differently in the kingdom beneath the earth, without sunrise or sunset to measure the hours. Days seem to unfold like slow ripples upon still water. You soon realize that the underworld follows another rhythm entirely. The arrival of souls replaces the turning of seasons. The quiet murmur of ancient rivers marks the passing of moments more faithfully than any shadow cast by the sun. Persephone has begun learning those rhythms. She no longer loses her way through the vast corridors of the palace. She recognizes the servants by name and greets them with gentle kindness. The great halls that once seemed overwhelming now feel almost familiar. She still longs for her mother every waking hour. Yet fear no longer fills every corner of her heart. Instead, questions begin taking its place. One morning, Hades invites her to accompany him beyond the palace into regions few visitors ever see. Together you cross broad bridges carved from dark stone stretching above silent rivers whose waters reflect faint blue fire instead of daylight. The air remains pleasantly cool, Tiny crystals shimmer within the cavern walls like scattered stars hidden beneath the earth. Every sound carries a remarkable clarity. Even distant footsteps echo for what seems like endless moments before fading into silence. At last they reach a quiet orchard. It surprises you immediately. You had expected only barren rock. Instead, ancient trees spread graceful branches beneath the glowing cavern ceiling. Their leaves shimmer with deep emerald tones, unlike any growing upon the surface. Silver vines twist around weathered trunks, and delicate flowers bloom where no sunlight has ever fallen. At the center of the orchard grows a single tree, unlike all the others. Its branches are heavy with brilliant crimson fruit, pomegranates. Each one gleams softly against the dark leaves, their rich colors standing out like small embers burning in the twilight of the underworld. Persephone pauses. They are beautiful. Hades nods quietly. This garden has endured since long before the cities of men were built. The fruit catches her attention, not because she feels hungry, but because it reminds her of life above. Its warm crimson color recalls sunsets over wheat fields, ripe berries gathered during summer, and the cheerful abundance that always surrounded Demeter. Yet something about the orchard also feels solemn, ancient, almost sacred. Some researchers believe the pomegranate symbolized both fertility and the hidden mysteries of death long before this myth took its familiar form. Its countless seeds suggested abundant life, while its deep red juice recalled blood and the unbreakable bonds formed through sacred rituals. Another interpretation survives in which the fruit simply reflected the meeting of two worlds, one rooted in growth and the other in eternity. The symbolism remains beautifully layered. Hades reaches toward one of the branches, then he stops. For a long moment he simply studies the fruit without touching it. There are laws here, he says quietly. Laws. The oldest of all kingdoms must be governed by them. Persephone listens carefully. He continues, "What is accepted willingly within the realm of the dead cannot always be left behind." His words are calm, not threatening, almost reflective. Persephone senses that he is speaking about more than food, perhaps about choices, perhaps about belonging, or perhaps about destiny itself. She asks no further questions. The orchard remains silent around you, except for the faint trickle of a nearby spring flowing beneath polished stone. The warning settles gently into memory. Neither of you yet understands how important it will become. Later that day, Persephone walks alone through another part of the palace where newly arrived souls gather before beginning their eternal journeys. She notices an elderly woman comforting a frightened child who has only recently crossed into the underworld. Without hesitation, Persephone kneels beside them. She speaks softly. Her voice carries the same warmth once heard among flowering meadows above the earth. The child slowly stops crying. The old woman smiles with quiet gratitude, watching from a distance. Hades says nothing. But one of the palace attendants notices something remarkable. The halls seem brighter today. No torch has changed. No crystal glows more intensely. Yet everyone senses a subtle difference. The presence of Persephone has begun altering the atmosphere of the kingdom itself, not by replacing darkness with light, rather, by bringing gentleness into places long shaped only by solemn duty. Ancient audiences may have understood this transformation as one of the deepest meanings hidden within the myth. Death itself remained inevitable, but compassion could still exist beside it. The queen who would someday rule here would not erase sorrow. She would accompany it, as evening settles over the endless caverns. If such words can even describe this timeless realm. Persephone once again climbs the high balcony overlooking the asphodel meadows. Countless pale flowers sway beneath the strange twilight sky. She remembers another field, the flowering meadow, the miraculous narcissus, her companions laughing, her mother's embrace. Memory arrives with astonishing clarity. A single tear slips quietly down her cheek. Hades joins her after a long silence. "You still wish to return?" "Every day." I expected no other answer. His honesty surprises her. For a moment neither speaks. Then Persephone asks the question that has quietly grown within her heart. "Did you ever ask whether I wished to come here?" The words hang between them. Hades lowers his eyes. No. It is the first time he openly acknowledges the wound at the center of everything. I believe destiny had already answered. Another silence follows. Long, thoughtful. Finally, he continues. Perhaps I confuse destiny with desire. The confession changes nothing that has happened. Yet it changes how Persephone sees him. He is no longer only the distant king who acted with absolute certainty. He has begun questioning himself. That night another dream comes. Persephone stands once more before the dark throne. This time she sees something resting upon its seat. Not the crown, a single pomegranate. Its crimson skin reflects both golden sunlight and blue fire at the same time. A quiet voice she cannot recognize whispers only one sentence. Every gift carries a path. She reaches toward the fruit. Just before her fingers touch it, the dream dissolves. She awakens with the words still echoing in her thoughts. Meanwhile, far above the earth, Demeter's vow continues reshaping the world. Fields remain barren. Temple offerings grow smaller. Travelers speak anxiously of villages where granaries stand nearly empty. Even the gods of Olympus now understand that time is running short. Hermes waits outside Zeus's great hall. The swift messenger has been summoned. No announcement has yet been made. But every immortal present senses that the king of the gods can delay no longer. Above and below, two kingdoms stand upon the edge of decision. One remembers the warning spoken beneath ancient trees. The other prepares to send its fastest messenger into the land where no sunlight falls, and somewhere deep within the quiet orchard of the underworld. Crimson fruit continues ripening upon patient branches, waiting for the moment when a forgotten warning will become the turning point of an eternal story. On Olympus, even the wind seems quieter than usual. The bright halls of the gods still shine with polished marble and golden columns that catch the morning light. Yet a subtle heaviness lingers beneath their familiar splendor. The fountains continue flowing. White doves still circle above the palace roofs. Sacred fires burn steadily upon their altars. To a passing mortal, nothing would appear unusual, but you know better. The silence has become the silence of decision. Across Greece, the famine continues spreading. Granaries that once promised security now echo with emptiness. Villages carefully divide their remaining stores of barley. Shepherds drive their flocks farther into the hills, searching for grass that grows thinner with every passing week. At countless temples, priests continue offering prayers to Demeter, though each sacrifice grows smaller than the last. The bond between gods and humanity has begun to weaken. Zeus understands this at last, seated upon his great throne. He watches thin columns of smoke rising from distant sanctuaries below. Once they climbed proudly into the heavens from every city and countryside shrine. Now many fires have gone cold. The king of the gods finally rises. No thunder shakes the mountains. No lightning tears across the sky. His command is spoken quietly. Hermes, the swift messenger, steps forward immediately. His silver sandals rest lightly upon the marble floor, their small wings stirring almost imperceptibly as he bows before Zeus. You will descend. Hermes already knows where. The daughter of Demeter must return. The order is simple. Its consequences are not. Around the great hall, the other Olympians remain silent. Athena lowers her thoughtful gaze. Apollo stands beside one towering column, the golden light surrounding him seeming strangely subdued. Even Hera says nothing. Perhaps each of them understands that no command, however powerful, can easily untangle the threads of fate once they have been woven. Ancient storytellers sometimes emphasize Zeus's authority in this moment. Others quietly suggest that necessity rather than certainty guides his decision. Historians continue debating whether the king of the gods acts from compassion for Demeter, concern for humanity, or fear that divine order itself may collapse. The myth allows each possibility to remain. Hermes departs immediately. You accompany him as he leaves Olympus and crosses the bright skies above Greece. The familiar world stretches beneath you like a painted tapestry. Blue seas sparkle beneath gentle sunlight. Islands rise from the water like sleeping giants. White temples gleam upon rocky hills, while narrow roads connect villages scattered across fertile valleys. Yet signs of hardship appear everywhere. Farmers stand motionless beside fields where nothing grows. Children gather fallen acorns instead of ripe grain. Market squares once alive with cheerful bargaining have become unusually quiet. Hermes sees it all. His expression grows increasingly serious. Soon the mountains give way to lonely ravines where ancient caves descend into darkness. Here the warm scent of pine slowly fades, replaced by cool air rising from hidden depths. The messenger reaches one forgotten entrance known only to immortals. Without hesitation, he steps inside. The daylight behind you grows smaller with every passing moment. The descent begins. Ancient roots twist through the ceiling like silent veins connecting the living earth to the kingdom below. Underground streams murmur softly through polished stone. Pale crystals cast their familiar blue light across winding passages that seem untouched by time itself. Hermes travels swiftly, yet even his speed slows slightly as the silence deepens. Few gods visit the underworld willingly. Fewer still leave unchanged. At last the great bronze gates appear ahead. Cerberus already waits before them. All three heads rise together as Hermes approaches. One watches the messenger. One studies the dark road behind him. The third seems to look far beyond both worlds, toward mysteries older than Olympus itself. For several quiet moments, neither god nor guardian moves. Then Hermes smiles gently. "We have met before, old friend." Cerberus sniffs the air. His great tail gives one slow movement against the stone. The enormous hound steps aside. The gates open without sound. Some researchers believe Cerberus symbolized more than a terrifying guardian. His three heads have inspired countless interpretations through the centuries. Some saw past, present, and future. Others imagined birth, life, and death standing together at the threshold between worlds. Ancient evidence offers no single explanation, leaving the mystery beautifully intact. Hermes enters the palace. Blue flames illuminate polished halls exactly as Persephone first saw them. Silent attendants bow respectfully while continuing their endless duties. Nothing suggests panic or conflict, only quiet permanence. Hades receives the messenger within the great throne room. Persephone stands nearby, for the first time in many weeks. A face from Olympus enters her sight. Hope flashes across her expression before she can hide it. Hermes notices. So, his voice remains calm. "The world above remembers you." Persephone closes her eyes briefly. "My mother." She has never ceased searching. The simple sentence carries more emotion than any elaborate speech could have offered. Hades remains silent. Hermes turns toward him. Zeus commands that Persephone be returned. The words echo gently through the immense hall. No argument follows immediately, only stillness. The blue flames flicker softly against towering columns. At last Hades speaks. "I knew this day would come." There is no bitterness, only quiet acceptance. Perhaps he understood from the beginning that Demeter's grief would eventually reach Olympus itself. Or perhaps the suffering spreading across Greece has changed even his own understanding. Ancient poets never entirely agree. Some portray Hades as reluctant. Others describe him as dignified and restrained. Each version preserves his remarkable composure. Persephone watches both gods carefully. She notices something unexpected. Neither seeks victory, neither raises his voice. Both understand that larger powers now shape every decision. Hermes steps closer. The earth grows silent. Hades nods once. "I know. The harvest has failed. I know. Mortals suffer. Again. I know." The repetition feels almost like prayer or confession. Persephone quietly turns away. She walks toward one tall window carved into the cavern wall, where faint blue light reflects upon an underground river flowing endlessly into darkness. She thinks of Demeter wandering beneath torchlight. She thinks of flowering meadows. She thinks of the dream, the empty throne, the crown, the mysterious pomegranate. Every omen now seems to gather around this single moment. Behind her, the conversation continues in low voices. No mortal could hear every word. Perhaps no mortal was ever meant to. Only one truth becomes clear. Persephone will leave. Yet something remains unresolved. Hades glances briefly toward the distant orchard beyond the palace gardens. The movement lasts only an instant. Hermes notices. So do you. Nothing is said, but an old warning quietly returns to memory. What is accepted willingly within the realm of the dead cannot always be left behind. The palace remains peaceful. The servants continue their work. The rivers continue flowing toward eternity. Yet beneath the calm surface of every passing moment, destiny is preparing its final test. For the journey home has begun. But the road back to sunlight is not yet as simple as it first appears. The palace of the underworld remains wrapped in its familiar stillness. Yet something subtle has changed. It is not visible in the blue flames that continue burning steadily beside polished columns. It cannot be heard in the quiet rivers flowing beneath ancient bridges. Instead, it lives within every glance exchanged between Persephone, Hades, and Hermes. Each of them understands that this moment will shape not only their own futures, but the rhythm of the entire world. Hermes waits patiently. Unlike Ares, he has never relied upon force. Unlike Zeus, he carries no thunderbolt. His strength lies in movement, in conversation, and in the remarkable ability to cross boundaries that no other Olympian travels so easily. He has walked among kings and shepherds, gods and mortals, the living and the dead. Now he stands between two destinies. Persephone steps slowly through the palace one final time. You walk beside her as she follows familiar corridors where blue light reflects across smooth stone floors. Palace attendants bow respectfully as she passes. Some smile with quiet warmth. Others lower their eyes, already sensing the approaching farewell, even in only a short span of divine time. She has become part of this kingdom, not entirely, but enough that her departure leaves a silence behind. She pauses in the crystal garden where luminous flowers bloom without sunlight. The pale lilies beside the underground stream have opened wider than before. Tiny drops of water cling to their petals, shimmering like scattered stars. She kneels beside them. Her fingertips brush one blossom gently. "When I first came here," she whispers, "I believed nothing beautiful could survive beneath the earth." She smiles softly. "I was wrong." The words carry no joy. Neither do they carry resentment, only recognition. Ancient myths often ask listeners to accept two truths at once. Persephone never wished to leave her mother. Yet she has also discovered unexpected beauty within the kingdom she feared. Rather than replacing one truth with another, the story allows both to exist together, much as human life often does. As Persephone rises, Hades approaches quietly. For several moments, neither speaks. Finally, he offers something small, a single white flower gathered from the crystal garden. It blooms only here. She accepts it carefully. Its petals feel cool against her hand. No promise accompanies the gift. No request. Only quiet remembrance. Perhaps that is why the gesture feels so deeply moving. Nearby, Hermes waits without interruption, understanding that some farewells should never be hurried. The three of you leave the palace together. Cerberus already stands before the great bronze gates. The enormous guardian watches Persephone approach with unusual calm. One massive head lowers until it rests gently beside her hand. She strokes the thick black fur without fear. The creature closes all six eyes, just for a moment. Ancient storytellers rarely describe this scene. Yet, later traditions often imagined the guardian recognizing his future queen long before the rest of the world understood her destiny. Historians cannot say whether such details belong to ancient oral traditions or later imagination. But they reveal how deeply listeners wished to see compassion reaching even the darkest corners of the underworld. The gates slowly open. Beyond them stretches the long road leading upward towards sunlight. Persephone takes one step, then another. She has almost reached the outer passage when Hades quietly speaks. "There is one thing before you go." His voice echoes gently through the stone halls. Hermes turns. Persephone pauses. Hades walks toward the ancient orchard you visited days earlier. The crimson fruit still hangs heavily upon the branches. For a long moment he simply stands beneath the tree. Then he plucks a single pomegranate. The polished skin glows richly against the blue light surrounding it. No one speaks. The warning given beneath these branches quietly returns. What is accepted willingly within the realm of the dead cannot always be left behind. Ancient versions of the myth differ greatly at this point. Some describe Hades offering the fruit openly. Others suggest Persephone accepted it unknowingly. Another tradition hints that the fates themselves ensured the moment would occur because destiny had already chosen its course. Scholars continue debating which version may preserve the oldest memory, and perhaps the uncertainty itself has always been part of the story's enduring power. Hades holds out the fruit. Persephone studies it. It reminds her of the orchards above the earth, of warm autumn afternoons beside Demeter, of harvest festivals now silent. She hesitates. No hunger guides her hand, only memory. She gently breaks the fruit open. Hundreds of jeweled seeds shimmer like tiny drops of crimson glass. Almost absent-mindedly, she eats one seed, then another. The sweetness surprises her. It tastes strangely familiar, yet unlike any fruit gathered beneath the open sky. Before she realizes what she has done, 6 small seeds have disappeared. Silence follows. Hades lowers his eyes. Hermes exhales slowly. Persephone suddenly remembers the warning, the oldest laws, the ancient kingdom. A quiet sadness settles across her face. "Can I still return?" Hermes answers honestly. "You can." He pauses. "But not forever." The road upward suddenly feels very different. No chain binds Persephone. No gate closes before her. Yet invisible threads have quietly formed between her and the realm beneath the earth, far above, as though sensing the turning of destiny itself. Demeter lifts her head while standing alone among barren fields. The wind changes. For the first time in many months, it carries the scent of growing things. Hope returns before certainty does. On Olympus, Zeus gathers the gods once more. The decision awaiting them is unlike any judgment previously spoken. Neither complete separation nor permanent union can now satisfy the oldest laws. A balance must be found. The ancient Greeks loved stories, where wisdom emerged not through victory, but through measured compromise. Nature itself seemed to teach this lesson. Day gave way to night. Summer yielded to winter. Life moved toward death, and death somehow nourished new life. Perhaps the world had always been preparing for this moment. Hermes, Persephone, and Hades finally emerge from the deep caverns into the first pale light, filtering through cracks in the earth. The sky appears astonishingly bright after so long beneath stone. Persephone closes her eyes against the warmth of the sun. Birdsong reaches her ears once more. The breeze carries wild thyme, sea salt, and flowering almond trees. She has returned, yet she knows something profound has changed. Part of her heart now belongs to 2 kingdoms, one above, one below, ahead. Demeter waits with hope stronger than fear. Behind, Hades watches quietly from the fading shadows. Between them stands Persephone, no longer only the maiden, not yet fully the queen. Soon, Zeus will speak the judgment that transforms personal sorrow into the eternal rhythm of the seasons. And from that single decision, every spring blossom and every falling autumn leaf will forever carry the memory of a daughter who learned that love sometimes asks the impossible. The first breath of sunlight feels almost overwhelming after so long beneath the earth. Persephone stands beneath the open sky and feels warmth returning to her skin. The golden rays of the sun move across her face. The wind passes through her hair, carrying scents she thought she would never experience again. Wild thyme grows between the stones. Olive trees whisper softly upon distant hills. Somewhere beyond the valley, waves strike the shore with the same steady rhythm they followed before her disappearance. Yet the world is not the same, neither is she. You walk beside Persephone as she travels the final stretch toward Eleusis, where Demeter waits. Every step carries memory. The path beneath her feet is familiar, but every familiar thing now feels slightly different. The flowers are brighter. The mountains seem larger. Even the sky appears deeper than before, perhaps because she has seen what lies beneath it. The moment Demeter sees her daughter, everything stops. For months, The goddess of the harvest has carried grief like a heavy cloak around her shoulders. She has walked through empty fields, listened to desperate prayers, and watched the world weaken because one precious person was missing. Now, she simply stands. No command, no anger, no divine proclamation. Only a mother seeing her child again. Persephone runs toward her. The two goddesses embrace beneath the open sky. The silence surrounding them feels more powerful than any thunder from Olympus. Farmers nearby lower their heads. Birds settle upon branches. Even the wind seems unwilling to interrupt the reunion. Demeter holds Persephone tightly, as though afraid that releasing her, even for a moment, might cause the earth to take her away again. My daughter. The words are quiet, almost a whisper, but they carry the weight of every lonely night. Every torch carried through darkness, every unanswered question spoken beneath the stars. Persephone closes her eyes. I search for you too. Demeter pulls back slightly. The sentence surprises her. Then she understands. Her daughter did not spend those months only waiting. She lived another story beneath the world, a story Demeter does not yet know. Ancient audiences would have recognized the emotional power of this reunion immediately. In Greek tradition, family bonds between generations carried enormous importance, especially between mothers and daughters. The myth does not present separation as something easily forgotten. Instead, it suggests that love can survive even when people are changed by experiences they cannot fully share. For a while, they simply remain together. No discussion of Olympus, no arguments about Hades, no questions about the future, only reunion. But fate does not disappear simply because hearts are healed. The world around them still bears the scars of Demeter's grief. The fields remain silent. The grain has not yet returned. Rivers still flow. But villages continue waiting for the first signs of renewal. Soon the gods gather. Zeus arrives from Olympus beneath a sky filled with soft golden clouds. Hermes stands nearby, quiet and observant. Hecate joins them carrying her torch, the same mysterious witness who first heard Persephone's cry. Other immortals gather at a respectful distance, knowing that this decision belongs not only to gods, but to every living creature depending upon the earth. Zeus speaks carefully. The king of the gods is powerful, but even he understands that some problems cannot be solved through authority alone. Demeter, the world cannot continue without balance. The goddess looks toward the barren fields, then restore what was taken. Her words are calm, but beneath them lies months of sorrow. Zeus does not argue. Instead, he explains the law of the underworld. Persephone has tasted the fruit of that realm. She cannot belong entirely to the world above anymore. The pomegranate seeds have changed the path before her. Demeter turns toward her daughter. For a moment, fear returns. Not fear for herself. Fear of losing Persephone again. Persephone takes her mother's hand. The gesture is simple, but it changes everything. I will not disappear. The words are gentle. I will always return. Some traditions describe Persephone eating only a few seeds. Others give different numbers. Ancient storytellers preserved several versions, each emphasizing different meanings. Some scholars believe the number of seeds was symbolic rather than literal, representing a connection that could never be completely broken between life and death. The exact detail remains uncertain. The meaning does not. A compromise is created. Persephone will spend part of the year with Demeter beneath the sunlight. She will also spend part of the year with Hades in the underworld. The world itself will reflect this arrangement. When Persephone rises, the earth awakens. When she descends, the fields become quiet. The seasons are born. The decision is not presented as a perfect victory for anyone. Demeter receives her daughter, but must endure separation. Hades keeps his queen, but must accept her departure. Persephone gains two worlds, but belongs completely to neither. This complexity is perhaps why the story endured for so long. It does not promise that every loss can be undone. It suggests something more subtle, that life often requires learning how to carry both joy and sorrow together. As Zeus finishes speaking, a strange warmth spreads across the land. At first it is barely noticeable. A single green shoot emerges from dry soil, then another, then hundreds, Farmers watching from distant hills begin calling out in disbelief. The earth is waking. The smell of fresh grain returns to the air. Wildflowers open beneath the morning sun. Streams run clearer. The sacred fires at Demeter's temples burn brighter. The goddess kneels and places her hand upon the soil. For the first time in many months, the earth answers. The moment becomes sacred memory throughout Greece. Generations later, worshippers would gather during festivals honoring Demeter and Persephone, carrying torches, offering grain, and celebrating the mystery of renewal. Archaeological remains at Eleusis reveal the importance of these traditions. Though the deepest teachings of the rituals were kept secret from outsiders, historians continue debating exactly what ancient initiates believed they received from these ceremonies. Some suggest hope for the afterlife. Others suggest a deeper understanding of nature's endless cycles. Perhaps both ideas existed together, because Persephone's story has always existed between worlds. That evening, mother and daughter sit together beneath an olive tree overlooking fields beginning to bloom again. The sky turns orange. Birds return to the branches. The first evening stars appear. Demeter listens as Persephone quietly describes the kingdom below. The rivers, the halls, the souls who wander peacefully, the strange beauty hidden beneath the earth. At first, Demeter says nothing. Then slowly, she understands. Her daughter was taken from her, but her daughter also discovered something beyond the life she knew. The child who left the meadow has returned carrying wisdom from a place no living person could visit. The empty throne from the dream now makes sense. The crown beneath the earth was never a symbol of loss alone. It was a glimpse of transformation. Persephone looks toward the fading horizon. Above her is the world of flowers. Below her waits the kingdom of shadows. Both are now part of her. And as the first spring winds move across the renewed fields, you realize that the story has reached its turning point. The maiden has returned, but the queen is beginning to awaken. The world begins healing slowly, not with a sudden miracle that transforms every field in a single moment, but with the quiet patience of nature returning to itself. You walk across the countryside of Greece as the first green shoots rise from the earth. Small flowers push through soil that had remained silent for so long. Rivers sparkle beneath the morning sun. Farmers who had almost abandoned hope return to their fields, touching the young plants with careful hands as though greeting something precious that has finally come home. The return of Persephone has restored more than crops. It has restored trust. For months, mortals wondered whether the gods had forgotten them. Now they see the earth answering once again. The connection between heaven and humanity has been repaired. Though everyone understands that something has changed forever, Persephone walks beside Demeter through fields of newly growing grain. The scene resembles the world before the descent. Yet there is a difference you can feel immediately. The young goddess who once gathered flowers without understanding the hidden paths of fate now walks with a deeper awareness. She notices not only blossoms, but also the roots beneath them. She understands that every season of growth carries the memory of darkness beneath the soil. A seed does not become a plant by avoiding the earth. It must first enter it. Ancient Greek audiences would have recognized this as one of the central meanings within the myth. The cycle of Persephone's journey mirrored the natural cycle surrounding them. Seeds disappear beneath the ground before returning as living plants. The sun disappears each evening before rising again. Human beings experience loss, change, and renewal throughout their lives. The story offered comfort because it suggested that disappearance was not always the end. Sometimes it was transformation. As spring spreads across Greece, festivals begin returning. Villages decorate their homes with fresh branches of olive and laurel. Temples once quiet with uncertainty fill again with songs and prayers. Women gather with baskets of grain and fruits, offering thanks beside sacred fires whose flames now burn brightly. You travel to ancient sanctuaries where priests perform rituals honoring Demeter and Persephone. The scent of roasted barley fills the air. Oil lamps flicker against marble walls. The sound of footsteps echoes across stone courtyards. where generations of worshippers have walked before. Some traditions describe these celebrations as joyful festivals of fertility and agriculture. Others emphasize the deeper mystery of life, death, and what may await beyond the mortal world. Historians continue debating how much of the later Eleusinian tradition came directly from this myth and how much developed from older agricultural beliefs. The surviving evidence suggests that Persephone's story became connected with some of the most important religious experiences in ancient Greece. But many details were intentionally kept hidden. Perhaps the mystery was part of the meaning. Not everything sacred was meant to be explained. As months pass, the fields become golden. The harvest arrives. Farmers cut wheat beneath warm sunlight. Villages celebrate with music and shared meals. Bread once again fills household tables. The fear of hunger becomes a memory slowly fading into the past. Yet even during abundance, a quiet truth remains. Persephone will leave again. You notice it first in Demeter. The goddess who once celebrated every flower now watches the changing light more carefully. She knows the warmth of summer cannot last forever. She knows that every golden field eventually becomes a field waiting for rest. The ancient Greeks understood this deeply. They did not imagine nature as a straight road moving only toward growth. They saw existence as a circle: birth, maturity, decline, renewal. The turning of the seasons was not an enemy. It was a conversation between endings and beginnings. One evening, as autumn approaches, Persephone walks alone through the fields where she once gathered flowers before her descent. The meadow has changed. The same mountains surround it. The same streams continue flowing. The same sky stretches endlessly above. Yet she is no longer the same person who stood there years before. She kneels and touches the earth for a moment. She remembers the day everything changed. The narcissus, the trembling ground, the black chariot, the darkness below. The memories are painful, but they no longer control her. A quiet voice speaks from behind. You have changed. Demeter stands nearby. Persephone smiles gently. So have you. The answer surprises her mother, but it is true. Demeter's grief transformed her. The goddess who once believed she could protect her daughter from every danger learned that love cannot prevent all separation. Sometimes love must become stronger than fear. The two sit together beneath the fading sunlight. No promises are made that nothing difficult will happen again. They both know better. Instead, they simply share the moment. And perhaps that is the deeper gift of their story. Not eternal happiness, but the ability to treasure happiness while it exists, far beneath the earth. Preparations begin for Persephone's return. The underworld awaits its queen. Hades does not send demands. He does not attempt to prevent what must happen. He simply waits. This detail would become important in later interpretations of the myth. Some ancient writers emphasized the sorrow of separation between Persephone and Demeter. Others focused on the quiet relationship forming between Persephone and Hades. The different traditions reveal a story constantly being reconsidered by each generation. No single version completely replaces the others, like the seasons themselves. The myth changes while remaining recognizable. When Persephone eventually descends again, the world above grows colder. Leaves fall from trees. Fields rest beneath the quiet sky. Farmers store their grain and prepare for winter. The air becomes sharper. The evenings grow longer. Yet this darkness is no longer meaningless. People understand that Persephone has not vanished forever. She has entered another part of her existence. Winter becomes a season of waiting rather than only loss. The ancient Greeks looked around and saw confirmation everywhere. A field lying dormant was not dead. A tree without leaves was not finished. A seed hidden beneath the ground was not forgotten. Everything carried the possibility of return. As you stand beneath the first winter stars, you look across the silent countryside. The moon rises above distant mountains. Smoke rises gently from village homes. Inside, families gather around warm fires, telling stories passed down through countless generations. Among them is the story of Persephone, the maiden who entered darkness, the daughter who returned, the queen who learned to belong to two worlds. And every time the seasons change, her journey begins again. The path between worlds is no longer unfamiliar to Persephone. The first time she descended beneath the earth, every shadow felt like a warning. Every echo sounded like a voice calling from somewhere unknown. The darkness seemed endless, and the silence of the underworld appeared like something waiting to consume her. Now, as you follow her downward once more, everything has changed. The same ancient caverns welcome her. The same blue flames illuminate the hidden roads. The same rivers continue their eternal journey through the depths of the earth. Yet the fear that once followed every step has disappeared. Persephone does not enter as a frightened maiden, being carried away from everything she knows. She enters as someone returning to a place that has become part of her. The transition is subtle. No trumpet announces it. No thunder shakes the mountains. But the souls of the underworld notice immediately. They gather quietly as she approaches the great gates. Shades who once wandered without direction now pause and turn toward her. They recognize something new in her presence. Not simply beauty, not simply divine power, understanding. The ancient Greeks often imagined their gods as reflections of forces within human life. Demeter represented the generosity and pain of the earth. Hades represented the certainty of mortality. Persephone came to embody the mysterious connection between both. She belonged to growth and decay, beginning and ending, sunlight and shadow. She became the bridge inside the palace. The transformation becomes even clearer. The halls that once felt cold now appear different beneath her gaze. The dark marble walls reflect her torchlight warmly. The gardens beneath the earth bloom more abundantly. The silent rivers seem less like barriers and more like pathways connecting forgotten memories. Hades watches these changes quietly. He has ruled this kingdom for ages. Yet he understands that something impossible has occurred. The underworld has not become brighter. It has become gentler, and that difference matters. You walk beside Persephone as she enters the Hall of Judgment, where countless souls await their final destinations. The atmosphere remains solemn, but there is no cruelty. The judges continue their ancient responsibilities, weighing the lives of mortals according to laws older than any kingdom above. Persephone observes carefully. She listens. She asks questions. A farmer who lived honestly, a sailor who spent decades crossing dangerous seas, a poet whose songs survived long after his body returned to the earth, a queen who carried both kindness and mistakes. Every soul contains a story. Every ending contains a lifetime. This changes Persephone. The maiden who once saw death only as separation begins understanding it as part of a larger cycle. Not a pleasant truth, but a necessary one. Some traditions describe Persephone as a merciful queen who listens to the prayers of heroes and mortals. Others focus more on her connection with mystery and renewal. Historians continue debating how ancient worshippers viewed her exact role within the underworld, because surviving texts reveal only fragments of a much larger religious tradition. Perhaps the uncertainty is fitting. A goddess between worlds should never be completely defined by only one. One evening, Persephone sits beside the river where countless souls pass toward their appointed places. The surface of the water reflects strange images, not the faces of the dead, but memories. A child running through a village, a sailor watching a storm approach, a mother holding a newborn, a soldier returning home. The river does not show death. It shows what existed before death. Persephone watches for a long time. Then she understands something her mother once taught her beneath the olive trees. Love remembers what the eyes cannot always see. The words return now with deeper meaning. Above the earth, Demeter remembers Persephone during winter. Below the earth, Persephone remembers those who came before. Memory becomes the thread connecting every world. Hades eventually joins her beside the river. Their relationship remains complicated. The beginning of their story cannot be forgotten. The meadow, the flower, the chariot, the pain. Those moments remain part of them. Yet time has created something neither expected. Respect, perhaps even affection. Hades no longer sees Persephone as someone who simply completes his kingdom. He sees her as someone who has transformed it. You have changed this place, he says. Persephone looks across the quiet river. No place should remain unchanged forever. The answer feels simple, but it carries the wisdom of someone who has lived between two realities. Ancient listeners would have understood this idea deeply. Greece itself was a land shaped by contrasts: mountains and seas, light and darkness, war and philosophy, celebration and mourning. The myth of Persephone reflected a world where opposing forces could exist together without destroying one another. Later generations would continue returning to this story because it offered something rare, not an escape from suffering, a way to understand it. As centuries passed, temples, poems, and rituals preserved memories of Persephone's journey. Archaeological remains at sacred sites reveal images of grain, torches, processions, and divine figures connected with renewal and the afterlife. Scholars continue studying these fragments, searching for deeper understanding of what ancient worshippers hoped to discover through her story. Some believe they sought reassurance about death. Others believe they celebrated the return of spring. Perhaps both were true. The story was never only about one thing. One night in the underworld, Persephone returns to the throne room where she once saw an empty seat waiting in a dream. Now the throne is no longer empty. She stands before it. The crown rests nearby. The blue flames surrounding the hall move gently, reflecting upon polished stone. She remembers the dream from beneath the olive tree. The empty throne, the mysterious warning, the feeling that some future version of herself had been waiting there. Now she understands. The dream was not predicting a loss. It was revealing a transformation. She places the crown upon her head, not with pride, not with triumph, with acceptance. The kingdom recognizes its queen. Beyond the palace walls, the rivers continue flowing. The stars hidden beneath the earth continue shining through crystal formations. The souls continue their eternal journeys, and Persephone begins her true role, not as a prisoner, not as a visitor, but as the queen of the underworld. Still, every year she will rise. Every year she will walk again beneath the open sky. Every year Demeter will welcome her, because even queens must return to their beginnings. And perhaps that is the deepest mystery of Persephone's story. She did not choose between two worlds. She learned that both worlds had always been hers. Long after the first telling of Persephone's journey, long after the fields of Greece have turned green and golden countless times beneath the changing skies, people continue gathering at a quiet place near the sea where memory and mystery meet. You travel now to Eleusis, a sacred city whose name would become forever connected with Demeter and Persephone. Here, beneath marble structures, torchlit pathways, and ancient olive trees, generations of worshippers came seeking answers to questions that every human heart eventually asks. What happens when life ends? Can something lost ever return? Is darkness truly the final destination? The road to Eleusis begins among ordinary landscapes. You pass through countryside where farmers cultivate grain beneath the Mediterranean sun. Small villages rest among hills covered with olive groves. The scent of crushed herbs fills the warm air. Donkeys carry baskets along dusty paths while ships move slowly across the nearby waters, their sails glowing beneath the evening light. Nothing appears extraordinary at first. Yet ancient Greeks believed certain places carried invisible memories. Eleusis was one of those places. The sanctuary built here became one of the most important religious centers of the ancient Greek world for many centuries. People traveled from distant cities and islands to participate in sacred ceremonies connected with Demeter and Persephone. Kings, merchants, soldiers, philosophers, and ordinary farmers all walked the same paths, leaving behind social differences as they approach the mysteries. You walk through the sanctuary as night approaches. Torches illuminate stone walls. The smell of burning incense drifts through the air. Footsteps echo across courtyards where countless others once walked before you. The ceremonies were carefully protected. Those who participated were forbidden from revealing the deepest teachings because of this secrecy. Even today, historians continue debating exactly what happened inside the inner sanctuary. Archaeological discoveries revealed temples, sacred buildings, ritual objects, and inscriptions. But the central experience remains hidden behind centuries of silence. Perhaps that mystery was intentional. Some truths, ancient people believed, were not meant to be written. They were meant to be experienced. The connection to Persephone is everywhere. Her story offered worshippers more than an explanation for the seasons. It offered a vision of transformation. Just as a seed disappeared beneath the earth before returning as grain, perhaps the human soul could also pass through darkness and find another form of existence. This idea became deeply meaningful in a world where death was an unavoidable part of everyday life. Ancient Greece was filled with reminders of mortality. War could arrive suddenly. Disease could take entire families. Sea voyages could end without warning. A person might build a beautiful home, raise children, and create memories, only to discover that life remained fragile. The story of Persephone provided another way to imagine the unknown, not as a door closing forever, but as a passage. As you walk deeper into the sanctuary, you notice symbols connected with the goddess everywhere. Grain appears in sacred imagery. Torches represent the search of Demeter through darkness. Flowers recall the meadow where Persephone's fate changed forever. The pomegranate represents the bond between worlds that cannot easily be separated. Each object carries multiple meanings. Nothing is simple. A flower can represent beauty and danger. A seed can represent burial and rebirth. Darkness can represent fear and transformation at the same time. This layered symbolism explains why the myth remained powerful for so long. It allowed different generations to discover different meanings. Farmers saw the return of the harvest. Families saw the love between mother and daughter. Those facing death saw the possibility of continuation. Philosophers saw a deeper reflection upon existence itself. Some researchers believe the Eleusinian mysteries preserved beliefs about the soul's journey after death. Others suggest they focused more on agricultural cycles and the relationship between humanity and nature. Surviving evidence cannot reveal every secret, and perhaps it never could. The silence itself became part of the tradition. One evening, as the final light fades across Eleusis, you imagine the ancient initiates gathering with torches in their hands. They move quietly. No shouting, no celebration like a public festival. Only careful steps through darkness. The torch flames create small circles of golden light against the night. Beyond them, the sea stretches beneath a sky filled with stars. The same stars that watched Demeter search for Persephone. The same stars that watched the daughter return. The same stars that continue shining over every generation seeking meaning. A warning from the ancient past seems to return. The gods had always shown that nothing exists alone. Life depends upon death. Light depends upon darkness. Growth depends upon rest. The mystery of Persephone was never simply that she went below the earth. The mystery was that she returned. As centuries passed, civilizations changed. Kingdoms rose and disappeared. Temples became ruins. Languages transformed. Yet the image of Persephone continued surviving. A young goddess walking through flowers. A mother carrying torches through the night. A queen sitting upon a throne beneath the earth. A symbol of the eternal movement between beginnings and endings. Archaeologists studying Eleusis today uncover fragments of a world long vanished. Broken columns lie beneath the sun. Weathered stones still carry traces of ancient craftsmanship. The remains cannot speak directly, but they suggest the enormous importance this place once held. Historians continue debating many details. Who first told the story? How much came from ancient farming traditions? How did the mysteries change over time? No complete answer exists. But perhaps that uncertainty allows the myth to remain alive. A completely explained story can become a record. A mysterious story can become a companion. And Persephone's journey has always been a companion to those standing before uncertainty. As night deepens over Eleusis, the torches slowly fade. The sanctuary grows quiet. The sea continues its endless movement against the shore. The olive trees continue whispering in the wind. You look back toward the path where thousands once walked, searching for something beyond ordinary life. Some searched for hope. Some searched for understanding. Some simply searched for peace. And perhaps, beneath all their questions, they carried the same quiet wish. that what disappears may not truly be gone, that darkness may contain hidden beginnings, that every ending may hold the memory of a return. The story of Persephone began with a flower. It traveled through grief, darkness, and separation. It became a story of seasons, a story of love, a story of mortality. And now, standing among the silent stones of Eleusis beneath the endless stars, you understand why ancient people never stopped telling it. Because somewhere within every human life exists a journey between worlds. And somewhere within every journey exists the possibility of coming home. The night settles gently over the ancient world, and the final chapter of Persephone's journey begins not with a great battle, not with thunder from Olympus, but with something far quieter, a memory, a breath of wind through olive trees, the sound of distant waves touching the shore, the soft glow of a torch carried through darkness by someone searching for what was never truly lost. You return once more to the meadow where everything began. The flowers are blooming again. The same mountains stand beyond the horizon. The same streams continue their patient journey through the valleys. The world appears unchanged, and yet everything is different. Here, Persephone once walked as a young maiden, unaware of the hidden paths waiting before her. She gathered flowers without knowing that one blossom would become a doorway. She listened to the wind without knowing that destiny was already whispering her name. Now she returns to this place, carrying the wisdom of two kingdoms. She is no longer only the daughter of Demeter. She is no longer only the queen of the underworld. She has become something more difficult to define. A connection between worlds. You can almost imagine her standing beneath the morning sun, remembering every step that brought her here. The fear of the descent, the loneliness beneath the earth, the quiet beauty she discovered in the kingdom of the dead, the reunion with her mother, the responsibility of the crown. Every moment remains part of her. The ancient Greeks understood something deeply human through this story. A person is shaped not only by happiness, but also by hardship. The experiences that change us are not always the ones we choose. Sometimes life opens a door we never expected to enter. Sometimes we find ourselves walking through darkness before discovering what we are capable of becoming. Persephone's greatest transformation was not that she became powerful. She was always divine. Her transformation came from understanding. She learned that the world contained both blooming fields and silent caverns. She learned that love could survive distance. She learned that endings were not always final. The seasons continued because she carried that knowledge between realms. When spring arrived, the earth celebrated her return. Fields awakened beneath golden sunlight. Flowers opened along ancient roads. Farmers once again placed offerings of grain before Demeter's altars. Villages filled with music and conversation as people celebrated another year of life returning from the quiet embrace of winter. But when autumn arrived, the world changed. Leaves fell, fields rested. The air became colder. Persephone descended again. Yet the ancient Greeks did not view this descent only as sorrow. They understood it as part of a greater rhythm. The earth itself rested. Seeds waited beneath the soil. The world became quiet so that it could begin again. Perhaps this was the deepest lesson hidden within the myth. Rest is not failure. Silence is not emptiness. Darkness is not always destruction. Sometimes darkness is where unseen things grow. You think back to the beginning of the story. The raven above the hills, the strange flame upon Demeter's altar, the dream of the empty throne, the miraculous flower, the pomegranate beneath the earth. Each sign appeared small when it first arrived. Only later did their meaning become clear. Ancient storytellers often understood destiny in this way. Fate rarely announced itself with certainty. Instead, it appeared through symbols, dreams, and moments that seemed ordinary until time revealed their importance. Historians continue debating how much of Persephone's story reflected religious belief, agricultural tradition, or philosophical reflection. Some researchers believe the myth preserved ancient ideas about the changing seasons. Others suggest it spoke more deeply about human experiences of separation, grief, and renewal. Perhaps the reason it survived is because it contains all of these meanings. Every generation finds its own reflection within the story. A farmer sees the return of the harvest. A parent sees the bond between mother and child. A person facing loss sees the possibility of reunion. Someone contemplating mortality sees a reminder that life and death are connected parts of a greater journey. And so Persephone remains, not trapped between worlds, but belonging to both. The palace beneath the earth still waits for her during the darker months. The halls of Hades remain illuminated by quiet blue flames. The rivers continue flowing. The souls continue their eternal paths. And beside the throne sits the queen who understands both the sorrow of endings and the promise of beginnings. Above, Demeter continues watching the earth. She knows separation will come again. She knows winter will return. But she also knows what winter cannot erase: love. The bond between mother and daughter survived the deepest distance imaginable. No mountain could divide it. No kingdom could contain it. No darkness could destroy it. The stars above Greece continue shining, just as they did thousands of years ago when ancient storytellers first whispered these names beside sacred fires. Demeter, Persephone, Hades. Their story has traveled farther than any ship crossing the Mediterranean. It has passed through languages, cultures, and centuries. Temples have fallen. Empires have disappeared. The voices of ancient poets have become echoes. Yet the story remains because it speaks about something that never changes. The human desire to believe that what we lose is not always lost forever, that memories continue living, that love reaches beyond distance, that every ending carries a hidden beginning. Now, as the final images of this ancient world begin to fade, you see Persephone walking once again through a quiet field. The flowers move gently around her. The evening sky turns gold. The first stars appear above distant mountains. She pauses for a moment and looks between the worlds she has known. The sunlight above, the darkness below. Neither frightens her now. Both are home. The wind moves softly through the grass. The sacred fires burn quietly in forgotten temples. The seas continue their endless rhythm against ancient shores. And the story of Persephone rests where it has always belonged, between memory and mystery, between life and death, between what is ended and what is waiting to begin. So allow the ancient world to grow quiet now. Let the mountains become distant shadows. Let the torchlight soften. Let the voices of gods and mortals fade into the peaceful silence that surrounds every sleeping night. Because like Persephone herself, every journey eventually finds its way back. Every season returns. Every memory remains. And beneath the endless stars, the world continues turning gently onward.